Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Our first Tales from Tech Support story of the day comes from Mastodon Bob. Server is in the bank vault. Got a support ticket to upgrade the ATM software for a small town regional bank in a former frontier boomtown out west. 3 locations served by a single ATM server. The server was located downtown in a stately old-school bank building erected around 1870 or so. The ticket said, server located in bank vault. Well, I thought that was a bit odd. I've seen stranger setups. I had credentials issued and got the all-important laminated green vault access badge on a lanyard around my neck. I showed up on time, was waved past security, and escorted into the vault. It looked like every bank vault you've ever seen in a movie. Safety deposit boxes and a cash cage in one corner. Solid steel vault doors 2 feet thick, but no server. I asked where the server was, and the bank vice president said, "Oh, that's in the old vault." I went down a long flight of steps to a basement sublevel and saw the old vault, which looked like the jail in a 1950s Western movie. Iron bars about 3 inches apart, and a huge lock on the door that required a giant iron key to open. The old original 1870 bank vault was completely empty except for one Dell server and a rickety wooden table with a monitor and keyboard. A hole was drilled into the ceiling to allow a single electric cord and a single copper telephone line to power all the ATMs in town. Upgraded without issue, but I enjoyed telling people of the secured server I'd serviced. What I think is absolutely hilarious is that they just gave this random IT guy access to all the money in the bank before realizing, wait a minute, the server's in the old vault. Our next story comes from Sauda95. That time I got threatened with termination by the CIO for trying to do my job. This goes back to 2019 when I was working on a mass workstation refresh to get everyone off their 10-year-old Windows 7 PCs and replace them with modern Windows 10 systems. This was partly because Windows 7 was now in the end-of-life phase, and also partly because the new ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, system was not certified for use on Windows 7. If it wasn't for the ERP upgrade, the Windows 7 machines would probably all still be in service to this day. I had replaced all but one machine, out of approximately 110 in total at this point. The last user was the one person in the entire organization that was using QuickBooks to track finances for 2 of the company's subsidiaries. Of course, since his machine was 10 years old, he was on an equally old version of QuickBooks that not only did the company misplace the installation media for, they also no longer had the product key. As it was end of life, we were out of luck in getting any help from QuickBooks support without paying more than what a new version would cost. I also learned that that version wouldn't run on Windows 10, even if we did have a way to reinstall it. Given this dilemma, and me being on the bottom of the organization chart, I deferred to my manager regarding what to do. He had asked me at least 3 times to get him prices for a new license to QuickBooks Enterprise, but balked at the cost each time. Ultimately, we reached what was supposed to be a temporary compromise, where the Windows 7 machine would be pulled from the user's desk, a Windows 10 machine installed in its place, and a remote desktop setup on the Windows 7 machine for him to remote in and do the QuickBooks work on the old system. I worked with the user on scheduling a time to do the swap out while he was going to be out of the office for a few days, and, of course, a time that I could show him how to remote into the Windows 7 box when he got back. I got as far as setting up the Windows 10 machine in the lab to copy his documents, desktop icons, bookmarks, etc., when his supervisor got word that I was in the process of replacing his computer. After explaining to her the workaround regarding QuickBooks, I got the impression she didn't listen to a word I said. She went on a rant about how I was not to touch his machine without her permission. At this point, I continued on with the file transfer and notified my boss, who said he would address the concerns. I didn't hear anything else and proceeded to schedule a date to do the swap. Right after swapping the Windows 10 machine, but before getting remote desktop set up, the Karen manager started ripping into me for not listening to her and being insubordinate. I told her to talk to my supervisor, as we needed to get rid of the Windows 7 machines due to security concerns, and that Windows 7 was not compliant with the new ERP system. Cue a story from her that when the new ERP system goes live, it will have the ability to import directly from a QuickBooks file. I walked away and proceeded on with my kludge of a workaround, as that is the order I had from my supervisor. I also sent my supervisor an email note detailing the encounter, to which I got no reply. The next morning, my boss comes to me saying he had a complaint from the Karen manager. I recounted what occurred, and he again promised me he would look into it. He also stated that the Karen was mistaken, and that while possible to import accounting records from QuickBooks into the new ERP system, it was not a simple task, and the same capability exists in old systems too. I went on about my business until early afternoon, when one of my coworkers took a phone call from the CIO. In this phone call, the CIO was not happy, as the Karen manager had escalated the complaint to him. My coworker didn't know what the ordeal was about, and I told him what it was regarding, and he transferred the CIO to my phone. I tried to explain that we had a workaround to the CIO, and that we needed to get him off the end-of-life Windows 7 machine, but he went on a ramble about how Karen was reporting that I was refusing to do my job. I tried standing my ground, as my manager was the one that okayed the swap and workaround, but he demanded that I put the old Windows 7 machine back in place, and casually mentioned that he would consider termination if I continued to ignore orders. After the phone call ended, I discussed the situation with my coworkers, and tried to reach my manager, who had conveniently disappeared. Since the CIO was demanding it, I put the Windows 7 machine back in place and updated it as much as I could. And there the Windows 7 machine sat, in service, up until the day I left at the end of 2020. I quickly noticed after this that my boss had a habit of actively avoiding this Karen of a manager. I had even seen him drop what he was doing and slip out of the back door to the office when she would walk in. What a really weird conclusion to this story. We'll probably never know why OP's manager literally runs away from the Karen manager, but she's gotta have some really good dirt on him or something, right? Our third story comes from Tabs Killer, Kevin in a server room. Some backstory. I am an IT professional and took a job at a small manufacturer in the Midwest with a very small IT staff. About 6 people to service a manufacturing firm of 300 over 150 computers under our control, and everything was managed in-house. Relevant to this story is an application to monitor our network and servers. It was a lightweight application that ran on my office computer and monitored all critical servers/networking equipment. Database, website, phone system, phone/fax line, VoIP converter, domain servers, backup servers, networking switches, routers, firewall, VPN, you get the idea. If it was on the network and important, my application made sure it was online. If for any reason it went down, all IT staff were immediately notified via text and Slack message, and a monitor in the IT office dedicated to this application showed which systems were down, and guessed on what single point of failure could be the cause if multiple systems were down. Ooh, and did I mention the air raid siren? In the event that something went down, it would override my computer's volume control and play an emergency air raid siren to get the attention of anyone in the office. Cast: me and Kevin, the IT team lead. It was a cloudy afternoon, sometime in mid-January, about 4:30 p.m. I was staring out the window of my office, considering heading out early for the day and thinking about what I was going to have for dinner when I got home. Suddenly, I am drawn back to reality by an air raid siren blaring in the office. Seconds later, I receive Slack and text notifications indicating that most of our equipment is down. Surely this must be a mistake. A bug that was never caught when we were developing this program, right? I look at the included list of the disconnected systems and quickly conclude that, if accurate, this is a huge issue. I open a terminal and attempt to ping some of the down equipment with the few IP addresses that I can remember in the moment. Sure enough, none of them are responding. I look over to the application and silence the alarm and see that it is unable to determine which device could be causing this failure. From experience, I know that this means that there are multiple devices down. I quickly glance at the list of devices and conclude that they are all in our second building. I breathe a slight sigh of relief, thinking there's a chance that one of our fiber optic transceivers had just died or a wire has been cut. I rush across the parking lot past numerous people trying to interrupt and tell me that they can't seem to access the database, or that their call cuts out, or the internet is down, and so on. I ignore them all since I already know that the issue lies ahead into our server room. I enter, bracing for what lies ahead. As I enter the room, the first thing I notice is that it is eerily quiet. For anyone unfamiliar with servers and networking equipment, they are loud, numerous fans spinning as if trying to take off like a helicopter, but not today, not now. Something is seriously wrong, I think to myself as I round the corner. Next thing I see is Kevin, standing in front of me. I briefly think to myself, wow, he got here fast, before noticing the wily coyote after running off a cliff-like look on his face, and the vacuum cleaner in his hand. No, surely he isn't that dumb, right? For context, our servers ran on multiple dedicated 20 amp circuits, each using approximately 15 to 17 amps, each with a battery backup, UPS, for if we lost power. It takes me a second to notice him unplugging the vacuum. It's plugged into one of our spray-painted red power strips, indicating that nothing should be plugged in or unplugged from this strip. Instantly, I knew exactly what happened. The 10 to 12 amp vacuum, paired with at least 15 amps of servers, has tripped an overcurrent protection on our UPS. I share a frustrated look, and Kevin sulks out of the room and starts answering questions from the crowds gathering outside. I quickly cast a prayer to any deity willing to listen, and start diagnosing which systems may be fried. I begin bringing systems back online. First network, then internet, then phone, intentionally leaving our servers and databases for last, as I'm sure some of them will not start back up. When I get to the database server, I am not at all surprised that 14 out of our 60 databases are corrupted from the loss of power with active clients. At this point, I begin reassessing my life choices, wondering why I didn't leave when I had the chance, and begin the hours-long process of recovering from a backup and trying to merge that with any non-corrupted records from the databases that would not boot up. By midnight, I had them all back up, and everything was humming along as if nothing had happened. I got some nice overtime, and Kevin learned a valuable lesson on following procedures. Right? No, of course he didn't, but that's another story for another time. Part of me feels bad for Kevin, because that's something I could see myself accidentally doing if I didn't know. But at the same time, it's like, Kevin, the power outlet is spray painted red. I could be wrong, but I don't think people do that just for design purposes. Anyway, our next story is from Corin Solist. Elderly assistance during a 4G outage. This happened a couple years ago, and I think it falls into the line of tech support, seeing as it was me helping with a failed system of sorts. I just finished my shift for an MSP, managed service provider, I used to work for and locked up for the night. Right outside was a bus stop. Usually no one was there this time of day, around 7 p.m., but I saw an elderly woman standing there looking puzzled and lost. I'll call her E. Hello ma'am, are you alright? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't seem to see the bus times, and I think I got off at the wrong place. I must have dozed off. Okay, let me help you. You have trouble reading the times or something? I checked the bus timetable board and it was blank. One of those digital ones. You know, green background, black digital clock looking text, network error, no 4G signal available. I checked my phone, and sure enough, there was an outage earlier in the day. I didn't notice it because I was on the office Wi-Fi. There was no paper timetable either, because idiots or kids love just ripping them off the bus stops for some reason. Or the council just didn't replace them after bad weather. Okay, that's the problem. There's an issue with the signal that gives these screens their information. Oh dear, how will I get home? I need to get back to, gives me her address area. Now, I know this bus stop. The route doesn't go there. Perhaps she got on the wrong bus and got turned around? In any event, I thought it over and said, okay, I can help you get home, just come with me to my office over here. Office was less than 50 meters from the bus stop. I went into the office and led her into the reception hall. It was a tiny office we worked out of, so I got her to sit at one of the empty desks and offered her tea. She happily accepted. While she was having a drink, I called a local taxi company on the office line, seeing as my phone couldn't get a signal either. I explained the situation to them and they asked for her address. I asked for the lady's address and she gave me her ID because she was having trouble remembering and that had her address on it. I gave it to the taxi operator and while we waited, I just chatted with her and helped her calm down. She spoke about her husband that passed away recently and how he was always the one who went out with her, so having lost him, that's why she might have gotten lost herself. We kept chatting and I tried to keep her mind off what was bothering her with the whole situation. The taxi arrived in about 20 minutes and I handed her off to them, locked the office back up for the night, then went home. I never saw her again, so I hope she was able to get assistance whenever she goes out somewhere. Not a crazy angry customer story, just an elderly lady that got lost and a tech outage made it worse for her. I did forward what happened to the local council, saying they need to have something better in place that doesn't rely on a certain phone provider's masts for bus screens. Supposedly, it's been fixed and uses more providers for signals and also keeps a cached copy of the timetables if it loses connection. Hope this helped brighten up some of your days if you're stuck on the help desk like I was yesterday. Big props to OP because I can almost guarantee that most people would not have been as generous. I think that's a perfect wholesome story to end the video off on, so I will see you next time.